Okay, what's going on, everybody? We are here. We are live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. If you can see and hear me clearly, please drop a one in the live chat, and then we can get today's show started. As I'm waiting for the ones to come into the live chat, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button because that's the most important thing you do for me on this channel. What it does, that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get their notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm as well. Secondly, if you're new to the channel, or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, you're always watching my content, but you don't hit the subscribe button, please do me a favor and yourself a favor by hitting the subscribe button, as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you'll be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends to inform them on this news and information. And yes, that does help to give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And lastly, I promise we're going to get to Joe Rogan and all that good stuff. Follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. That is extremely important. Okay, please follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below. It's pinned in the live chat right now, and it will be pinned in the comment section at the end of this stream. And with the introduction out of the way and the ones in the chat, let's get into today's show. So, many of you may be familiar with the fact that Donald Trump appeared on Joe Rogan. There's no way you could not know that, right? Because that interview has over 40 million views on it. Well, following that interview, which was a very good interview, there was a discussion that was had in which Joe Rogan talked about how he wanted to have Kamala Harris on. And in very funny fashion, Donald Trump stated that Kamala Harris would not last in a 3-hour long interview with you. She'd be like just bent over, not bent over, excuse me. She would like be like have fallen over on the floor in a fetal position, just not capable of doing the interview, right? She would go comatose or something like that. He said something very funny. He didn't say bent over. My apologies if that came out wrong. But he did reach out to her. They were in communications, but it fell through. It fell through. And Joe Rogan actually rejected the interview with Kamala Harris for this reason right here. Campaign demands, which in my opinion are completely ridiculous, right? Some people, if you're a vote blue no matter who, you might not find her demand as a big deal, but I think it's completely nonsensical because it goes to prove that what Donald Trump said is true, that there is no way that she's going to last in a 3-hour long interview with you. She just can't do it. She can't do it, right? So Joe Rogan posted this on his Twitter page. He posted, also for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in the studio in Austin. My sincere wish is just to have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. But you see, that's the problem, is that Kamala Harris is not interested in having any type of genuine conversations with anybody. If it's not going to be friendly and if it's not going to be scripted, she doesn't want to do it. And here's the thing. If you go back and you watch the Joe Rogan Donald Trump interview, he stated multiple times over, I don't want to interview her. I just want to have a conversation with her. I just want to talk to her and get to know her. And I believe that Joe Rogan is genuine when he says that. I do not believe that what Joe Rogan is intending to do is to have her on and get you and have her in a gotcha moment, right? Where he's challenging everything that she says and things of that nature. I don't believe that he's looking to do that at all. I think he genuinely just wants to get to know her and have a conversation with her. But that's not what she's interested in. Kamala is only interested in putting up forward the facade of being some sort of individual who's eligible, or I shouldn't say eligible, but who is qualified for even being the president of the United States. She wants to continue with this facade. And so therefore, if she's going to continue with it successfully, she has to continue to just simply go with the script and seem and sound presidential. She doesn't want to look like a normal person, because if you think about it, though I don't believe that this is Donald Trump's strategy per se, it does work in his favor clearly that Donald Trump is himself all day, every day. He is always him. So to counter that, what Kamala Harris is doing is that she wants to make herself appear to be so much more presidential, right, than Donald Trump. But in today's day and age, it just comes off as fake because that's what it is. And that's what she's being. She doesn't really know how to be anything other than that. And God forbid, if she really got to talking and got comfortable telling you about what she really thinks and how she really feels about certain situations and certain experiences, that could tank her campaign even more. So she is not going to do that. And that's also not to mention the fact that when it comes to Joe Rogan, he is not very fond of and is highly critical of the whole censorship campaign behind labeling everything misinformation and disinformation, because as we all know, the misinformation and disinformation talking point, those are censorship talking points, right? That's what those are. Those are censorship talking points. Those are censorship buzzwords. When you hear misinformation or disinformation attached to anything, that means censor it. And he is very much against that. And I do believe that he would ask her about that. But you can ask someone a question and have a conversation on topics that you may both disagree on without it being disrespectful. It could just simply be conversational, where you're just looking to get clarity. Even if I disagree with you, I'm not even going to give you pushback. I just want to know what you think. These buzzwords, misinformation, disinformation, that seems to be highly associated with censor immediately. Is that how you take it? How do you feel about it, Kamala? And then she would respond in kind, but she doesn't want to do that. She's not interested in that. She's only interested in putting forward the facade. And just based on the fact that she knows that there is an issue that he takes with her position on misinformation and disinformation, she's not going to do that. That's why she prefers to go on a podcast like Club Shay Shay, which is Shannon Sharp's podcast, to which there's nothing wrong with that. I like Shannon Sharp. I think Club Shay Shay is a great podcast. It's obviously very successful, and he's a very good interviewer. But I knew that once she appeared on Club Shay Shay, it was going to be a softball interview. I think we all knew that, and that's why I wasn't interested in watching it at all. But at the same time, had Kamala Harris gone on Joe Rogan, I'd be very interested in watching it, because I know it's not going to be softball per se, but it will be a very interesting interview. Now, what's interesting outside of this is that today, right? Today, JD Vance is actually supposed to be appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, I'm not really sure what Joe Rogan's interview schedule is like as it pertains to when he airs the show and the interviews that he does do. So I don't know if it's going to drop today, if he does it live in real time, or if it's going to come out tomorrow. But as of today, there is going to be an interview with Joe Rogan and JD Vance, and I will be tuning into that because I know it's going to be a very good interview. And I know that JD Vance is going to rip Kamala Harris in half. It's going to rip Kamala Harris in half for not doing the interview with Joe Rogan because of her ridiculous demands. 1 hour is not enough time to have an interview on a Joe Rogan podcast. What she's looking to do is dip in and out very quickly. An hour, it takes about an hour for the conversation to get started on a Joe Rogan podcast. An hour is not enough time. If I remember correctly, what's my man's name again? Is it from Fox News, Brett Baer? If I remember his name correctly, in their interview, she showed up late, cutting into the time that they had, which many suspect was done intentionally. You intentionally came in late just to keep the interview short and to cut it short. So once things got a little heated, right, and you're feeling the pressure, time to go. And I believe that would be the same thing that they would look to do with Joe Rogan. You inconvenience yourself. You come and fly out to us. It's only going to be for an hour. And even though you're flying out to us, we're going to show up late and cut the interview short. That's a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of Joe Rogan's time. But thank goodness we're going to have JD Vance pop up on the Joe Rogan podcast today. And once again, I know it's going to be a very good interview, and he's going to rip Kamala Harris in half. This article reads very quickly. I'm just going to read you the first paragraph here. JD Vance, former president, JD Vance, former President Donald Trump's running mate, will sit down for an interview with Joe Rogan on Wednesday after the podcast host rejected a potential interview with Vice President Kamala Harris because of her campaign demands, or ridiculous demands. That was loud. Her ridiculous demands of wanting essentially a 35-minute long interview with Joe Rogan, because that's what she was actually looking to do, because she doesn't want to have any type of real, genuine, authentic conversations with anybody. That isn't what she's seeking to do. And here's the thing now, as we go to the next page of the stream, there's a reason that she doesn't want to do an interview with people like Joe Rogan. She's definitely not going to do another Fox News interview, because I believe she feels she doesn't have to. She feels that she doesn't have to, because when you have certain things that are kind of working in your favor to a degree, I mean, if I was Kamala, I'd feel very confident too. I'd feel very confident too. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, what do you mean certain things, working in her favor? Well, let's get into this story here first. How many of you are familiar with the, I believe it's Secretary of State in Colorado and what's going on over there? Shout out to my man Rob, Blacklight Revelations. He's the one that put me on to this story. If you're not familiar with what's going on in Colorado, well, let me introduce you to this story. Now, of all people who broke this story, I was highly shocked and highly surprised that it came from this man right here, Kyle Clark. Kyle Clark is a news anchor, a local news anchor for 9 News Colorado. This man is DNC to the core. He is DNC to the core. But he broke this story and pressed the Colorado Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold. As you can see in this tweet here and in the interview that I'm going to play, Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold called a 2021 leak of voting system passwords by a Republican clerk a serious breach of voting system security protocols. But Griswold tells me that her office leak of voting system passwords is not a serious breach. So when it happened on the Republican side, this was a serious breach. But now when it happens on her side as a Democrat, it's not that big of a deal. But wait, there's more, because there seems to be a pattern with Ms. Griswold, her administration, you can say, and just shenanigans surrounding voting, we'll say. Okay, we have to make sure that we tread lightly when speaking on this stuff on YouTube. Griswold's office has made a series of errors undermining voter confidence, mailing voter registration invites to 30,000 non-citizens, wrongly notifying voters they hadn't voted, and leaking voting machine passwords. I asked Griswold if she will resign. Absolutely not, is what she said. Let's get into this right now. I want to play this clip for you before we continue on with this discussion. Let's jump into this here.
First time that your office has made mistakes that have damaged voters' confidence in our elections. In 2022, your office sent out mailers to 30,000 non-citizens inviting them to register to vote. They, of course, are not eligible to register to vote. That same year, your office used Colorado's ballot tracking system to send messages to specific Coloradans encouraging them to vote when, in fact, they had already voted, causing confusion that had to be cleaned up by the county clerks. And now this leak of the voting system passwords. Given your office's repeated errors that have damaged confidence in our elections, which you say is paramount, will you resign?
Absolutely not, Kyle. And I just want to,
Why would she have to resign when she's Team DNC? I'll let her finish speaking in a moment. I'll let her finish and give her explanation in a moment. But she's Team DNC. Resign for what? As long as we're in power, nothing's going to happen. She'll mess around and send another 30,000 voter registration forms to 30,000 non-citizens. Nothing's going to come about it, despite a repeated pattern. These aren't coincidences anymore, in my opinion, what I think, what I believe, what I assume, right? But this isn't just oopsies, right? That's not what this is anymore. She's gone far beyond oopsies at this point. When you're talking about sending out 30,000 voter registration forms to non-citizens, 30,000, you're wrongfully notifying voters that they haven't voted, and you're leaking voting machine passwords. That's a pattern of intentional negligence, in my opinion. That's just what I think, what I believe, what I assume. It's very intentional. This isn't oopsies. And when you're talking about 30,000 mailers going out to 30,000 non-citizens, you're talking about margin of error numbers at this point. Those are margin of error numbers, okay? Those are the numbers that swing a state from left to right. That's the number of mailers that she sent out to non-citizens. But let's let her explain, right? Let's see whatever she's going to say and whatever she's going to talk about. Let's get into this. And also hit the like button if you haven't already. So he asked her, are you going to resign? And she very smugly and arrogantly said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not, Kyle. And I just want to, you're unfairly characterizing and leaving out some crucial information. We came out immediately and said a postcard had been sent out to people who are ineligible. The postcard clearly stated that someone had to be a U.S. citizen. No one tried to register from that group of people. We were actively tracking it. And it became a situation where no one registered. And to push.
That doesn't matter, but I'll get into that in a moment when we hop into another story very similar to this, and I believe it was St. Louis, Missouri.
Back even further, Kyle, Colorado is tied for #1 in confidence in the country in our elections. We have stood up to situations time and time again to protect the right of Coloradans, going over and beyond what anybody would ask of civil servants in this office.
Given the number of fundamental errors that your office has made that have undermined voter confidence in elections, why do you think they keep happening?
Why do errors happen? Kyle, there are...
Because they're intentional, in my opinion, what I think, what I believe, what I assume. I don't know this at the point of fact. It's just what I think, what I believe, and what I assume. Are we still, do we still have the freedom of speech to where you can just, just my assumption of things? I'm sorry. I'll let her continue.
Why do errors happen? Kyle, there are unfortunately situations that arise every election that we are fixing as quickly as possible in the counties and once in a while from my office too.
This ended perfectly, and that is definitely going on a thumbnail for sure. Once again, this isn't oopsies. When the same type of errors, air quote errors, continue to occur surrounding voting, at a certain point, like I said, you got to go past oopsies and just recognize the pattern of something that appears to be happening intentionally and deliberately. And it doesn't matter that apparently, allegedly, because we don't really know this to be, I don't know this to be true. Allegedly, nobody attempted to register, I guess, but that's irrelevant. Even if that's true, you sent out 30,000 registration forms to non-citizens and none of them filled it out, I guess, allegedly. It's irrelevant that none of them filled it out if that's true. And I'm going to get into that in a moment, why it's irrelevant, as I use this next story to piggyback off of this one. Many of you might be aware of this, but many of you might not be. If I'm not mistaken, this is in St. Louis, Missouri, where once again, voter registration forms were sent out to Harris's migrants over there. This was a Fox Files report, a local news outlet over there. Let's jump into this story.
Investigation by Fox 2 finds non-U.S. citizen migrant workers are being encouraged to vote in November's presidential election. Fox Files investigator Chris Hayes found this out after an employer of migrant workers alerted him.
These union mailers were just sent to non-U.S. citizen migrant workers. They say, quote, stop the steal by stopping Trump's allies, vote for Harris Walz and pro-worker candidates. Here's 11 of the mailers addressed to non-U.S. citizens mailed to their workplace, which alerted Fox 2. The business, which specializes in landscaping, does not want to be identified. The company's manager told us their migrant worker employees, who are from Mexico, are all background checked and have legal H-2B visas, which allow their temporary stay here. The manager explained the migrant workers are also allowed to have union representation and that they pay dues to their union, called La Una. But the manager cannot understand why the union would send mailers to non-U.S. citizens, encouraging their vote in the presidential election.
We know why they're doing that, but I won't say too much. Censorship is real on YouTube. That's why you need to make sure you're following me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below. It'll be pinned in the comment section as well after the stream, and it's currently pinned in the live chat.
Tried repeatedly to get an explanation from Washington. Their vote in the presidential election. We've tried repeatedly to get an explanation from Washington, D.C.-based union La Una. 3 emails to their communications department and 3 phone calls. A 4th call also went to voicemail. We checked with Missouri Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, a Republican who's in charge of Missouri elections.
Well, I think it shows why we need a law in Missouri that requires individuals to show proof of citizenship before they register and before they vote.
I am in 100% agreement with that. 100%.
Ashcroft Zoomed with Fox 2 from his Jefferson City office about his concerns a non-U.S. citizen might vote.
You can register online without any sort of proof of citizenship. You can register without even an ID.
You can register without even an ID. Now, because I am fair, right? Unlike MSNBC and CNN and all the other DNC outlets, this is only a minute and a half of a 3-minute news segment. In the full news segment, the same individual that's speaking, it discusses and explains that though you can technically register to vote without the ID, without an ID, you cannot vote without one. You can register to vote without one, but you cannot vote in Missouri without an ID. You still need it. So Vote Blue No Matter Whoers will take this to say, okay, well, that doesn't matter that those mailers were sent out and they were sent to non-citizen migrant workers. It's irrelevant because they wouldn't have been able to vote anyway. But that's like saying, what's a good kind of metaphor to that? That's like someone violently, that's like me violently assaulting you, right? If I violently assault you and the police come to pick me up and I say, hey man, what are you doing? Why are you arresting me? Well, you violently assaulted this person. Yeah, but they didn't pass away. So what's the big deal? That's the equivalent of that. Well, they didn't pass away. The execution didn't occur. The desired result didn't come out from that. So uncuff me. Why am I under arrest? This is the same situation here. You don't get to do this and say, oh, well, they wouldn't have been able to vote anyways. You don't get to do what the Secretary of State in Colorado has going on, this woman right here. You don't get to engage in what her administration has engaged in by sending out 30,000 registration forms to 30,000 non-citizens and then turn around and say, oh, well, you know, I mean, none of them registered anyways. So because the execution of the desired result, what you were looking for, didn't happen, that doesn't excuse you from the crime. And that's what all of this is. It's a crime. In my opinion, what I believe, what I assume, what this woman's office is engaging in is criminal. Because you keep seeing the repeated pattern of these oopsies, these errors surrounding voting and voter registration. This is criminal on my behalf, in my opinion. And you know, this is what Trump is talking about. When we're talking about, you know what? I'm not going to do it. I'll save that stuff for after the election when he wins. If he wins, hopefully. I won't say what I was going to say. I won't say what I'm going to say. But with all that being said, man, that does it for today's show. That does it for today's show. You see the shenanigans that's going on. 30,000 registration ballots sent out to non-citizens in Colorado. We have a couple dozen that were sent out to non-citizen migrant workers in St. Louis, Missouri. All of this stuff is being swept under the rug by the mainstream DNC press, and Vote Blue No Matter whores are acting like this stuff isn't a big deal because the desired result, the desired outcome didn't come about, right? So because the desired outcome didn't come about, oh, well, then what's the problem? Well, there's a huge problem, right? And we're going to keep seeing this moving forward. So thank you all for joining me today. I do want to give my thank yous to those of you who supported the channel as we exit today's stream. Please hit the like button on your way out. Follow me on Telegram. That is extremely important. Please do that. And shout out to Janesta Coleman. I appreciate you, Janesta. She said, hello, TD Media Group and the chat. Thank you, Janesta, for always showing support. My man, Saul, feeding my family once again. He said, according to the law, Berkeley website in 1922, Walter A. Gordon became the first African-American to earn a law degree at Berkeley. I'm not sure who is uncle or cousin Sherman is. Saul is responding to a live stream that we did on Kamala Harris on my second channel, just talking with TD. I was just talking with TD and Rob. That's my other channel too. But TD Media Group clips and quick hits, where Kamala Harris was literally, in my opinion, lying about these kind of fake black family members that all of a sudden she grew up with, you know, right? These fake black family members by love, air quotes, by love, not by blood. Right. But I appreciate you, Saul, for coming through as you always do. And yeah, Kamala Harris is a liar. She's a liar. Mick007 said Kamala can't do 5 minutes. She wouldn't. Yeah, she wouldn't. Kamala couldn't last 5 seconds with Joe Rogan, where she has to be without a script and has to genuinely be her authentic self. She wouldn't last at all. Shout out to my man Rob. He said the data is in quality control. The more Kamala Harris talks and appears publicly, the more her likelihood of winning decreases. The numbers probe it. I think you mean the numbers prove it. And I 100% agree with you. That was the same thing that Speaker Johnson said. The more she speaks, the more her numbers go down. Rob also said Kamala Harris wants a Terry time interview. Only TD can get it done in 15 minutes or less, like old school pizza deliveries. I'm literally the only one that could do a 15-minute interview with her, and it would make sense because that's typically how long I try to do my interviews on the other channel, right? And shout out to my man Cutthroat Rod. Appreciate you, bro. He said blinking and stuttering are a sign of lying. She was doing a lot of blinking and a lot of stuttering. And I think it suits us well to end the stream just like this. So thank you all for joining me today. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And also, man, please follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group and Rumble as well. The link to both my Telegram and Rumble are in the description box below. Thank you all for your time. And until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.